lie down on the floor and keep calm.
This is what KLF is about. Also known as the justified ancients of Moo. Furthermore known as the jams.
I can feel the hate coming towards me already for that intro. Hello, welcome back to Walton on Trent. It's September 2025 and this is episode 1 of Flange Squeal Season 2. Back after my summer break. If you're a returning viewer, thanks for sticking with me. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by and welcome aboard. I've got quite a lot done since the end of the last series and you can see that the station is finally starting to look like a station. In fact, it's looking better than I ever imagined and is becoming more atmospheric and characterful with the addition of every bit of detail. We'll come back and take a closer look at what's been done a bit later on. No particular theme to this episode, we'll just have a general catch-up and then pick up the usual format from next episode. So, let's kick off with new loco arrivals. There are quite a few. We ended last series with a big focus on my Class 90 fleet. Well, no sooner had that episode been uploaded than I quickly acquired 2 more in Intercity Swallow livery. Acquired in mint condition, this one has been renumbered to 90014, the Liverpool Phil, named after the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, and configured as a northbound runner with driver and second man. The second was a complete bargain, but was acquired in a rather sorry state due to a so-called professional weathering effort that bordered on criminal damage in my book. Luckily, I did manage to clean it up to a usable condition, and it's been renumbered to 90007, Lord Stamp, named after a former chairman of the LMS. At 60 quid, this is now my cheapest loco and runs southbound motor rails, sandwiched between the passenger coaches and up to 5 GUVs. Both of these are running on standard Bachmann chips right now, but they'll get upgraded to sound in due course. My Class 90 fleet now totals 9, and I'm not really minded to add any more now, unless Bachmann release one in the European Rail Freight Distribution livery. Not new models, but I have completed the retrofit of new pantographs onto my Class 87 fleet. These are Helgen spares I got from Olivia's Trains, which seem to have a decent supply of them, or they did. They're still not perfect, but they're the best I could find, and they do fit pretty well into the isolators on the roof here. It remains to be seen how well they perform when I get my catenary up. Hopefully they weren't a waste of money. Either way, even if the standard Hornby pantograph does look better, with no spring action, they were never going to work under the wires. The Hornby cast-offs have been redeployed onto my Lima Class 92s on their ignominious drags between Crewe and Wembley. I still need to sort their clattery wheel sets. I've added a second HST to the fleet. Neither of them are operational yet, as I don't have any coaches. I'm hoping Hornby will announce some new Swallow liveried Mark IIIs in the new year. There were around 10 or 12 HST services through Stafford each day in my era in each direction, so they were quite common. Most of them were on long-distance cross-country services from the south and southwest up to Manchester, Liverpool and particularly Scotland. But there were 3 direct services a day from Euston to Holyhead and back, using 8-car sets from the Great Western Main Line. One will run as it is, 43103 John Wesley, but the other will be renumbered to 43185 Great Western. I've seen sets with either John Wesley or Great Western in them, running on both cross-country and North Wales services, so they both seem a good fit, and they give me the option and opportunity to run a northbound and southbound HST at the same time with either 7 or 8 coaches. I do like the HST, and I'll get the best screaming Valenta sound I can possibly find into both of these, and I think they'll look and sound epic, especially inside the station. Moving on to brand new models, and 2 Cavalex Class 60s entered service here in July. In Cole's subsector livery, 60061 Alexander Graham Bell will be seen on my MGR trains until 1994, when it came under the ownership of Trancentral. From that point on, it can also run on aggregates and China clays, so this fits all my era and will give me a lot of running. "60098 Charles Francis Brush wore construction livery until around April 1994, so will haul my aggregates train up to that time. It didn't actually enter service until December 1992, so I do have a small hole at the start of my era, which I can either ignore under Rule 1 or see what Run 2 throws up. I did also have an Accurascale Class 60 in the shape of 60015 Bowfell in Transrail livery. However, despite the startup sounding promising, this is how it performed. Those videos were sent to Accurascale support along with my model. Several other YouTubers and Facebookers have reported the same issues, although many haven't, to be fair. I suspect the problems are inherent in the sound file, but I'll see what they come back with and update you next time. In terms of appearance, I think both the Cavalex and AccuraScale models look absolutely superb and sit perfectly alongside each other. However, the Cavalex sound wins hands down for me, and I'll be nailing my tug colours to the Cavalex mast in future. A much more satisfying AccuraScale release was the Class 50, and the much maligned 007 arrived at the end of May. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check out my special video tribute to the model and the original locomotive. Hot on its heels, I got tipped off about a special limited edition for the Class 50 Alliance, and after watching their webpage like a hawk, I bagged possibly my favourite 50, 031 Hood. 007 remained in service until early '94, but Hood had retired into preservation just before my era started, so it's very much a Rule 1 for me, but I think a plausible one. It's modelled in mint large logo livery with NSE flashes and white rimmed wheels, so looks the part for the rail tour duties I'll assign to it. I've paired them up and always run them as a double header, which looks and sounds very impressive. In another unfortunate turn of events, 50007 also turned into a bit of a disaster during video production, hence the lack of running shots. Sorry about that. While fitting the etched accessories with my usual dabs of PVA glue, I had cause to make a second attempt on one of the nameplates. Wiping off the glue residue from my first attempt with nothing more than a cotton bud and edge of soft card, I was stunned to see the printed detail underneath rub off too. The paintwork already ruined, I deliberately tried to remove a little more as I couldn't quite believe my eyes. Sure enough, with just a dry clean bud, in other words it's nothing to do with the glue, I can and did rub off some of the body side lining, black and gold, very easily. The great thing about social media is that we can all share our experiences with each other, and several posters on Facebook commented that they had suffered similar livery damage on other AccuraScale models using weathering methods they'd done for years with no issues. I also had comments from some of the guys at AccuraScale themselves, fair play, stating that this absolutely should not, could not happen. So, 50007 is now at AccuraScale support too. This isn't an AccuraScale bash, and I'm not inviting a pile-on in the comments, that's not my thing, and their engagement with their customers always seems best in class to me. They've been very open and sympathetic to the issues with the 50 and 60, and it's only fair I give them opportunity to look into the problems I've had. I will of course let you know in a future episode. Moving on to new rolling stock, and I purchased a rake of 8 new Bachmann Mark 1s for the rail tour train and sold my older ones. The only thing wrong with the older ones was the executive dark grey was too light, so this swap saved me a paint job. I'm still running the old restaurant buffet car for now, as the new one is quite aggressively priced, I think. No doubt it will get reduced in the future. The 2 Mark IIF BSOs you can see in this train will have a light conversion to look like Mark IID BFKs. These BOC TEA tank wagons were acquired as a bulk purchase from eBay towards the end of last series, but I had no suitable magnetic couplers to run them with. Now I do, and they're very nice runners. It's the only complete tank train I have at the moment, and we'll take a closer look at it in the next episode. 3 brand new Bachmann VAA vans have joined the MOD train, replacing some old EWS VAAs I'd repainted myself. They weren't a bad effort, but my weathering came out too dark, and the rail freight logo transfers didn't take too well to the ribbing on the sides. These were most often used as barrier wagons on trains of varying lengths and consists, although mine is a uniform rake of VGAs, which was also common. At around the same time as the Class 6s arrived, I finally completed my aggregates train, and it's an impressive rake. I've been collecting these for a good couple of years as I was very picky about buying wagons with properly straight handrails on the back. Despite being robust and surprisingly heavy wagons, too heavy in fact I'd say, the handrails are the weak point and they're quite soft. These will be weathered and loaded at some point, but for now I'm just enjoying finally being able to run the train. It certainly adds some colour to the layout. If you followed me from the start, you'll be familiar with my regular tale of woe that was my Hornby KFA container rake, a train that would derail if I simply looked at it the wrong way. Well, the whole train has gone, replaced with the recently re-released Bachmann FFA FGA sets, and what a difference. These are incredibly smooth runners and have a very well designed coupling mechanism. I retained some of the Hornby containers and now mix them in with the Bachmann ones, and some I got from CRL Intermodal, so I can make one train look like many simply by swapping the boxes around. Again, we'll have a closer look at container traffic in a future episode, but it seems I finally have a reliable container train to run. When Tiger Rail went bust in 1992, their PBA China clay wagons ended up in the ownership of Tiphook Rail and were repainted into their blue livery in early mid-1994. I like to reflect accurate running as far as possible, and when this set of 8 came up at Clark Railworks for a very good price, I grabbed them. I need 3 or 4 more, and they need lubricating a bit and magnetic couplers, but these will now run the Cliff Vale clay traffic as it appeared under the Transrail contract in the final 12 months of my era. These will almost always run behind a Class 56, but occasionally a 60. In the earlier rake, I've acquired another weathered Bachmann JIA. I really like these wagons and they look very authentic mixed in with the white PBAs. I already have 2 pristine ones which I will probably swap out for weathered as I find reasonably priced examples. Last but not least, the slowly growing Albright and Wilson train has gained another PCA wagon. It's still just too short to run realistically as a block train, so I'm looking for another 5 or 6 ideally. Off the tracks, the Trent buses fleet has grown again, with another Leyland National joining the depot, and my first Bristol VR has arrived. This is in the older Trent livery and could quite plausibly run as an older vehicle earmarked for future withdrawal. As you can see, despite or maybe because of my summer break, I've still managed to get a lot done at the station, and I'm really pleased with how it's starting to look. At the end of last series, I was struggling to design and build a retaining wall at the front of the layout by platform 5. I had a second attempt at a concrete wall using texture paper, but perhaps unsurprisingly, it suffered the same soggy fate as version 1 and ended up in the bin along with the whole idea. I've reverted to a laser-cut MDF kit, or rather several of them, these are from Bunter's Yard, to create a run of blue brick arches on this side of the station. My thinking is that these are a remnant of the original Victorian station, which have been incorporated into the 1960s concrete bunker I'm building. They're almost a perfect height, but I did cut out sections of brickwork where the large concrete crossbeams slot into the bedrock behind. I've also added a run of concrete reinforcement across the top of the arches to add strength, something I've seen in the West Coast mainline road bridges while walking around where I live, near Exton Junction. I think this looks very effective and offers a nice contrast to all the concrete elsewhere. Completing this really unlocked all the other jobs I needed to do, so the station ballast has finally been completed and weathered. The platforms have had a bit of remedial work done, making them smoother and being repainted. That allowed me to move on to finally fixing the lateral beams in place. And that meant I could start placing the upright pillars down the centre of the two island platforms. I've been looking back at photos and videos I've taken, and I'm still wondering if these are too thick. They're about a scale 5 feet across, so until I decide on that, they remain unglued and undetailed. They will have signage on some of them eventually, such as station name signs and platform numbers. Not fixing the pillars hasn't stopped me from building the ceiling, and this has probably added the most striking effect so far. If you follow any of my posts on various Facebook groups, you'll know I've been acquiring every spare Scrabble tile I can find on eBay, and that's what these are, glued face down onto a 2mm MDF panel I've cut to fit between each beam. They're either primed or painted cement grey in these shots. I'm half tempted to paint them in a 1960s style sky blue colour, thinking the architect may have thought it would lighten the atmosphere in here with an artificial sky rather than a real one. I don't know. They're all spaced with tile spacers I just had kicking around on my garage shelf, and I have to admit I've been remarkably lucky how the spacing and alignment has worked out across the whole station. All the tile courses are centred and aligned with tracks, pillars and platform edges as well as I could possibly manage, and I think the overall cumulative effect is really eye-catching. As I mentioned in previous episodes, my inspiration here is the ceiling of the Euston Station concourse and the ceiling of the old Great Hall at the original Euston Station. In reality, I don't think these would be concrete or cement, that would just add unnecessary weight to the ceiling, but probably a resin or fiberglass moulding, hence why I might try them in a more lively colour. They'll also get some weathering effects reflecting the 30 odd years of rail traffic that has passed underneath them, and I'll add some clusters of ventilation fans too. I've designed these panels to be removable for servicing and camera access. I'm going to design the station building here to be removable on one board, and the catenary and lighting rigs will be fixed on the underside of these beams. I've built two lift shafts here out of 2mm MDF, braced internally with wooden strips and wrapped in blue brick texture paper. The doors are from scale model scenery, sprayed with Vallejo aluminium acrylic paint. I didn't have the platform depth to do one on platform 1, so I've remade one of the concrete inserts with a cutting for lift doors. I've left ceiling space around the lift shafts for now until I see how things work out with the stairs. These will resemble the staircases at Coventry Station, albeit a bit wider. I'm loath to cut these little stair sets I bought, so I'm just going to roll with it and build quite wide, grand staircases on these two platforms. Platform 1 stairs will be half the width, which is still wide enough. I'm getting close to starting these now, and once I see how they go, I'll have my floor level for the concourse. My plan is to get all of this area, effectively street level, at one level fairly soon so I can start adding the actual buildings, starting at the back and working forwards. You can go back and look at episode 3 series 1 for my grand design for the station area, but to recap, station concourse, office block, shopping mall, station forecourt, bus station, all linked together in the style of Birmingham's old Bullring Centre. This end of platform 2 and 3 has been reworked a couple of times already, but I finally settled on a stabling point, bolt hole siding, and I've remodelled the platforms and facings to accommodate that, with some very heavy bashing of the Bunter's Yard platform kits I've used throughout. The prototype for this is a cross between the stabling points at the Wolverhampton end of Birmingham New Street, which are quite short and usually occupied by electric locos waiting to pick up northbound trains, and this larger one at Warrington Bank Quay. It won't be permanently or maybe even frequently occupied. If you don't know, my location is loosely based on Stafford, so Crewe Depot is only 20 minutes up the tracks, so it's unlikely that much will be laid over here at my station. But the odd Class 31 or 47 idling away here is probably realistic, and maybe a coal sector Type 5 changing ends on a Rugeley-Toton MGR train. I'm not going to do too much work on this yet until I start to move down the layout with my scenic work, but I think it should look a bit oily and dishevelled. None of the ballast or weathering extends too far past the platform ends at the moment. Before I get into those areas, I'll need to think about trackside detail such as point motors and trunking, and I have plenty of work to do on the station and other buildings for now. I'm using Woodland Scenic's fine ballast throughout in various mixes of brown and buff, and it's all been weathered with rail match sleeper grime, plus some areas of black where locos would stand, such as the heads of platforms 2 and 4, and the freight loop where that 47 on the right is standing. A signal will be there eventually. Platform 1 has a darker spot too, as that mainly accommodates push-pull passenger rakes with a loco on the back. I've added a couple of oily patches by smearing some of this light oil over the weathered sleepers to give a slightly shiny wet effect. The track weathering is heavier inside the station as it will never get rinsed by rain, although I haven't gone quite as black and heavy as New Street was due to the type of traffic in here. It does get lighter around the building line, although I'm not sure how distinct this looks on camera. The ballast is deliberately patchy in places, and where I've needed to top it up a bit, I've done what will be done on the real railway and used new clean ballast represented by the buff coloured stuff. The last thing I wanted was everything to look even and uniform. It's not perfect, I'm sure I'll get the hang of this by the time I get to the tunnel down the end, but I'm happy with how it looks. I've also done some weathering on the station structure, starting with the concrete crossbeams. The most obvious is on the station front, where I've added plumes of black weathering where diesels would restart. Again, it's heaviest on the 2 double tracks and lightest on the fast, mainly electric lines. There is some on the underside of each beam too, although again the camera doesn't pick this up too well with the light contrasts in here. Some bits I'm having to weather before I fit them, but I will do a full blended weathering effort when the time is right. The station signs you can see here on platform 1 and the lift shafts are custom sheets from Sankey Scenics, and I've added the maroon intercity stripes with one of these paint pens. This was quite hit and miss, probably a 50-50 success rate in fact, as it can bleed very easily and I can't tolerate anything but the sharpest edge. The thicknesses are a little inconsistent, but it's as good as I can reasonably get, and the overall impression is exactly what I wanted. It definitely made a difference doing it. The striped signs came in around 1992, I think, although Stafford didn't get its new signage until 1993 from what I can see. I do want one of these big illuminated signs for the platform ends, but nobody makes anything even remotely similar, so looks like another scratch project for me in the future. I've also been placing some of these benches and planters, which again really lift the realism of the station as soon as you put them down. I can also hide some imperfections with detail like this, although I will foot all the walls and pillars with some of this leftover edging to hide the uneven join with the platform surfaces. So that's where I'm up to. It really snowballed once I got that brick wall in, and it's exceeding my expectations so far in terms of spectacle and atmosphere. My big challenge is to make the upper levels easily removable and to give myself easy access to the platform level for filming. Otherwise, all of this will never be seen. I don't have much scenic running space on this layout because of my loft structure, so although the station acts as a scenic break, it is very much part of the scenery. As well as watching trains fly through the junction and past the signal box down there, I want to put you inside the station and give you the feel of what it's like waiting for a train in here in the early 1990s. Station progress will be the recurring theme of Series 2, and you'll see a lot more detail being added and the whole monstrous edifice start to grow in this part of my old industrial city in the North Midlands. From next episode, I'll be bringing back my usual mix of rolling stock and loco projects and looking at real-world prototypes. We'll start off with a look at the BOC traffic and these rather nice TEA tank wagons I showed you earlier. And to mix things up a bit, I'm starting a two-parter covering the long overdue customisation of my Mark 3A coach sets. They're going to get a much needed paint correction, passengers, lighting, weathering, the full works. That project will wrap up with a feature on the Euston-Glasgow services and the West Coast Main Line's flagship train, the Royal Scot. And coming up at the end of the year, I'll have my Christmas special feature on coal traffic. So, hopefully lots for you to look forward to. I'll be back in October. In the meantime, if you're a long-time subscriber or a brand new viewer, thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.